Ted, you want to start us off?
So between me and Angie, you mean, right?
Yes, sorry.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
Among the duos that make up the businesses.
So, Angie and I, we both come from creative backgrounds, right? So I studied film and Angie studied graphic design. And when we started Poketo, it was really just sort of this accidental kind of business. We went in knowing we were just wanting to throw a party. We launched a product, and then that product was something that sort of exploded and kind of, went from that one product into, then into other ideas of what art every day could be, so into T-shirts and housewares and so on and so forth. And we did everything from beginning to end, from the beginning. So we kind of doing all that and knowing the business, and it's sort of this like learning by doing, which I'm kind of sure like all of us are in that same boat. Like we had no retail background, there's none of that. We just sort of learned by doing. And I think over the years as we started to build our team, that's when we started to understand, okay, we're good at some things. Angie's good at some things, I'm good at things, and we started to sort of kind of divide and conquer in that way, right? Everything that you guys see on poketo.com and the website, that's all Angie. Like she just brings that aesthetic into it. And I've really kind of taken sort of more of like an operational role and also dealing with a lot of collaborations and kind of things like that. And sort of having those two things and being able to, from the two of us 16 years ago to now, a team of 25 people, it's one of those things where it's like, we've needed to absolutely do that, and to be able to do everything that we do, we have to kind of, it's really nice because then it's one of those things where it's like, I don't have to think about what Angie's up to, I just let her do her thing and then she lets me do my thing.
It requires a lot of trust, huh?
For sure.
But of course, if you're married, you're probably working on trust.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think when we started Poketo, it was something that when we first started dating, we started Poketo. So it's been natural. It's been natural to us, so.
That's so interesting. Hopi, what about you in terms of your, because you're working with your sister, and it's obviously a relationship that predated the business. What was that like kind of negotiating that growth and those roles?
It's so much fun. It's a blast. I mean, mostly it's a blast. We get into fights all the time, but I think when you're doing a creative business with someone that you're really close to, whether it's a spouse in both of your cases, or a sibling, or just a friend, a close collaborator, there's something very powerful about getting into a shared brain space. That's what we call it. And I don't know if you guys have this experience with your partners, but it's been hard. Like listening to you talk about your role with Angie, I think it took us longer to figure out the distinction between our roles because we're both creative, but we also both sort of have business instincts. I went to business school, so that helps. But Lily's actually a marketing genius, I think. So we both weigh in on the same exact things, so it's been less clear and less straightforward. But slowly but surely we've kind of figured out, okay, I'm gonna sign off on these decisions that are business related. Lily will sign off on the creative decisions, but we're both collaborating constantly. And I think, like, to get back to your question about creativity, it takes us together to make the best work. Like it takes us getting out of business mode, putting the screen down, putting our phones away, getting off Instagram, and just doing looking up, like opening your eyes and actually looking at the architecture in LA, looking at the architecture in Jaipur, India, where we work. We have to like do a whole okay, creative time. Okay, phones down, laptops down, eyes are open. We're gonna look through our books. We're gonna look at what surrounds us. We're gonna find pattern in unexpected places on the mosaic on the street of Broadway downtown. And it really helps having a partner to do the looking, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think really quick too, I remember when we were having this conversation, I loved the fact that you guys as we were chatting in your studio, you guys were finishing each other's sentences as well too. Yeah. And what I loved about that as well is that also was in your creative work. Like I remember you were saying something like, I'm not too sure who started this motif or that, because it just was sort of this seamless thing.
Yeah, Yeah, which is fun. But sometimes, yeah, sometimes there like isn't a boundary between us. So,
It's all
I
blurred.
don't know if you.
Yeah. Stephen, what about you? I'm curious as to, from what I was able to kind of read and see from just like your website and kind of stalking you guys online, it sounds like there is a little bit more of a division of roles with you and Bex. Do you want to sort of speak to that and how that came about?
Sure, yeah. So we kind of got our start in this company in 2011. I kind of had an initial idea about tearing apart a piece of furniture, and I was in conversations with Bex about the role I was in a company that I had started and then sold, but was working in, kind of feeling like that was kind of coming to an end, that kind of season, and Bex was really supportive, saying, I mean, what's next? What do you want to do? And I was saying I was kind of interested in furniture, and it's really wild to have somebody believe in you 100% because you can talk yourself out of creative ideas really fast. And Bex has been somebody in my life who just pushes me to a place where like I actually create my best work. And when we first started the company, Bex was working in healthcare, and for the first 2 years of our company, she was basically working 2 jobs. She was working 12-hour shifts at a hospital, and then she would be invoicing on her breaks. And so grateful for that. And then as we've kind of continued on this and kind of hired some staff and kind of figured out how to make it work, Bex is really creating all of that structure for our company, and then reminding me that I need to sit down and sketch on a daily basis, you know? Because I can kind of get my head into the tyranny of the urgent, I should check in on production and I should kind of make sure everyone's doing stuff. And she's just like, no, you need to spend time on creative. So, but we again, married and worked together, constantly trying to figure out that line of separation between both physical places and conversation and ideation. So, I think it's something that we've gotten much better at over the years, but it's tricky.
Following up on that, I'm sort of curious, one of the things that sort of struck me about from the book, and also just thinking about how each of you works and lives, that sort of line of demarcation, like when your job is to be creative, and say you're working in a studio all day, it's a slightly different dynamic probably than for somebody who has a day job and then kind of at 5 o'clock goes home and kind of puts or tries, largely unsuccessfully, to put it out of their head for a period of time and really have a demarcation between their personal time and their work time. I wonder how do you guys navigate that stuff, and how is that represented in the different spaces that you inhabit over the course of the day? Did you want to kind of, because I know you guys have some really interesting spaces that you work within and among, so I'd be curious.
So right now our kind of life is broken up into this loft that we live in, and then right next door to that loft in the same building we have our showroom, and then about a 15-minute drive we have our studio where we office out of, and then we have another unit upstairs in that building that is kind of like storage, and then also for me a creative workspace, and Bex an office space where she can just kind of unplug and just kind of focus. So those are our 4 kind of spaces. It would be amazing if it was all consolidated into one, but you kind of as you grow, you take on those extra kind of spaces. But one thing that we've kind of set as a bit of a rule, and I wish we were super strict about it, but sometimes it's hard to be, but we try to not block creativity. So when we travel together or when we're out to eat at a meal together, sometimes it'll spark an idea, and to just say, well, we don't talk about things outside of work, I think kind of kills that moment. So we say, talk it out for about a minute, and then say, hey, let's return to this tomorrow morning, so that we can at least get it out and the other person can kind of remind them. So we try to create a little bit of structure and system around keeping ideation flowing while still respecting the fact that it's let's just be on a date.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that's really important. Yeah. Hopi, what about you guys?
Similarly, I think we're so passionate about what we're doing, so we always want to talk about it. It's never a chore, or it's always exciting. It's our topic of convo mostly. So there's that boundary that totally doesn't exist. But we're a woman-run business. Lily has a baby. She's about to have her second one. It just so happens our staff is all women right now, and we try to be I mean, I think the beauty and fun of working at a small creative company is that it allows flexibility, and we really try to live by that for us and our employees. Like, once 6 p.m. rolls around, unless we have to have phone calls with our team in India, which happen at like 10 p.m. or 7 a.m., which is tough. But outside of that, it's like the workday's done. Like, we're working in textiles, nothing is life and death. You know, the whole idea behind why we're doing this is the joy that we're able to bring ourselves and also to bring to our customers' homes and lives. And so we try to live that through like the daily schedule. Like 6 p.m., that's it. Work is done.
Oh, sounds awesome. And just quickly, I'm curious about sort of how much you live among your own product, like within your homes. Like, how much of that is present in the way you decorate and kind of feather your respective nests?
I mean, we design things that we want. Like, our ideation process is born out of what we ourselves want. So we started with scarves, which were really cheap when we were broke and we had zero disposable income. Now have just a tiny bit less broke. But you know, now we're at life stages like, oh, I would like to upholster my couch. You know, that's something I never would have thought about when I was 28 when I started Block Shop. So our product categories have expanded with our own personal interests, and so therefore our houses are insane explosions of Block Shop, and it's like embarrassing and weird, but it's everywhere.
It makes total sense to me.
But we try to layer it in. Like, I think that's a good point about differentiation. Like, I have a personal aesthetic that's a little more romantic and whimsical and birds and flowers, and there's some of that too in my house. So the home is a nice space to like mix it up a little bit and push yourself outside of it. And I know you've spoken to that.
Yeah, curious to hear your
thoughts.
I
mean, it's funny though, because when we started out of our studio apartment went to our house. Our house, we chose our house because underneath the house had 2 large garages. So we put all of our inventory there. And it got to be a lot, right? Kind of living sort of 24/7 with stuff, with the business, kind of doing that sort of took a toll on us for the first few years before we actually got a separate office space. But what happened was our friend, who was an artist, used to living in just the craziest warehouse spaces, came in and just said, how are you guys living like this? You know, like, what's going on here?
That's when you know it's bad.
Yeah, and both Angie and I were just like, what do you mean? You know, we just didn't know any different. But we decided, okay, let's move this out of the house, and you know, because you're working 24/7, you're doing everything. All the work is in front of you, you know, so you're just constantly working. And so until we actually had that separation, that's when we started to really put that, you know, be disciplined, just like you guys, just be disciplined about sort of, here's our work time, here's our sort of personal time, and that's really, really helped. But our stores, you know, we have 4 stores here in LA, and you know, they're full. Like, everyone always asks, like, oh, your house must be so beautiful, or there's all this, you know, decor and things. But our house is actually kind of the exact opposite of our stores, right?
So interesting. Yeah.
So like, our stores are full of stuff and color, and there's a lot of stimuli. But the way we see our home is sort of more of a palate cleanser in a lot of ways. So, you know, we live in Mount Washington. It's, you know, you hear owls at night, you hear coyotes, and it's really, really peaceful. And it's nice to be able to sort of be in kind of the thick of LA and downtown, and then to be able to sort of retreat.
Yeah.
And our space is, you know, it's just mostly all white. It's really a few pieces from friends, artwork from friends, and from travel, and we really just kind of make that space. We sort of intentionally made that space the opposite of our work, and
So
I think that's really helped kind of like keep that separation.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting. And in terms of, you know, I of course was really admiring all of your actual spaces from the book. One thing, Steve, that really struck me about your home was the collection kind of aspect of it. The books, is it whiskeys? Yeah.
We have a lot of
And I
whiskey.
mean, I really relate to that. I mean, I have like a lot of theories about like why, like I'm a Gen Xer, and I think Gen Xers are just like natural collectors, that we kind of came up in a time of like actual stuff as opposed to like records, as opposed to like, streaming. But I wonder sort of like how is your home kind of in different from what you kind of what you might say do in a showroom, or in a sort of, how do you differentiate that?
Yeah, I think when we first moved into this loft, it was right actually before we had really started the company, and we kind of talked about the loft being a blank canvas. So we said, let's try to create our version of what home looks like in this space, and we're going to feel free to, sell all the furniture and paint over to try to evolve that story. But then we also, put things in there that are really special to us. So like, we've kind of made a point to, on our anniversary, instead of buying each other gifts, we'll buy art from an artist. And those things we can kind of like identify, like, oh, like that year and this year and that, and certain things are really kind of special. So we want to like give them a place in our home. We also kind of identified that I'm a little bit more of a creator, Bex is more of a curator. So in the sense that, like, if you both gave us $100, I would take that money and go buy materials and make something out of it. She would research the best first edition book of something and then select that one, And so it's just the difference of how we kind of spend money. And I think it's also creating a space that honors both of those two values. And so I think that that's kind of what our home looks like and is like slowly in the process of evolving into. All the furniture is furniture that we've designed, with the exception of a designer pool car home, these two chairs that I really, really love, and then an Eames lounge chair and ottoman that is Beck's favorite design. And so we kind of have our little separate pieces, but the rest of the space is kind of real estate for us to keep dreaming.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing you mentioned, I think is interesting, and sort of come up with Ted in conversation as well, was this idea that your spaces are almost like they have markers of like where you were at a given moment in your life, and they sort of keep a record of something from those times. Ted, I think a lot about when you've talked about the different stores and sort of when they've launched. Could you talk a little bit about sort of what that's like to sort of be able to kind of track your development and your growth through those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I always think of Poketo as this sort of living, breathing thing. It's always in flux. It's always changing. So as we grow as individuals, like the brand is growing as well too. And the stores themselves, I design all the stores, and I think that might be maybe from my film background as well too. Just being aware of space, right? Yeah. And I think that we opened our first, even though we started in 2003, we didn't actually open our first brick and mortar store until 2012, so 9 years after. And then maybe every couple of years we opened up store 2, then 3, then 4. And each of these spaces were sort of kind of a marker in time, actually. It's sort of, each one had a specific kind of look and vibe. Yeah. And I think the brand is continuing to evolve, right? So even when we started with wallets and really collaborating with hundreds of different visual artists, it's really evolved into working with industrial designers and architects. And, the book itself, highlights entrepreneurs and chefs, and sort of this Poketo world to me is like the creative world is so many different types of people. Yeah. And I think that each of these spaces that we got to go into was really kind of amazing to see, like how everyone, how it's a reflection, of themselves, of each of these spaces, and everyone too. It was this continuous kind of it was this continuous process, it was this continuous work in progress. Yeah. We would go into, let's say, for example, I know Takashi is here, he's in the book, and at first he was like, I'm not too sure if I want you to photograph the house because it's just not ready. You know what I mean? It's like, this room's not ready or that's not ready. And we actually saw that a lot in so many of the creative spaces. Like, they just weren't comfortable because they're in this constant process of change.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with Poketo. We're just in this constant, like, we embrace that things are always going to change.
Yeah.
That the brand is continuing to evolve. And that's great. Like, I love that. Because also as people and as individuals, like, you're constantly changing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really, in a lot of ways, like, embracing that and really just kind of just letting it flow.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I think another thing that really drives that, it seems like it drives that that flux and that evolution is the fact that you're constantly partnering with other creatives, and you're also kind of, the spaces themselves are very communal, not just in terms of the fact that they are open to the public, but you have workshops and events there and stuff like that. And it sort of really got me thinking about how, first of all, the book itself is really the sort of depiction of this great community that you guys have around you, and this sort of clear sort of kindredness that exists among this group of creatives in LA and across the country. But I wondered also, like, for you guys, Hopi, you know, part of your community is actually not even in the U.S., right? You're working with artisans and people across the globe. What is it like to kind of be spanning these two very different worlds? And how do you create a sense of community across the divide?
Yeah, it's like one chaotic family business that spans two continents. We're a family business here in LA, and we're working with 5 different families directly in India. So that comes with, like, so much gratification of just interpersonal relationships. Like, our whole business was started out of a relationship with this community of printers who were looking to get international exposure and wanted to share their craft with a larger audience and didn't really know how, didn't have a channel. And meanwhile, we were like, well, we don't know what we're capable of, but sure, let's work together, let's partner together in a way that highlights and celebrates and honors this incredible craft that in the town that we're working in goes back, in some cases, 5 generations. So people have learned, the skill has been passed down from generation to generation till today. And so it was just born out of spending a lot of time with this one particular family and getting to know them and the ebbs and flows of block printing in India, how it's structured around family life. Everybody stops for lunch. Maybe, like, the family's grandmother comes in and brings a chai, and then we all sit down and argue about the designs. The kids are coming back from school and, like, jumping around and helping bring things over to the washing area, and it's a total family business, and we love that. And our interest from our side of things is to celebrate that and highlight that and help educate our customers about the imperfections. The imperfections are what tell the story, and the imperfections are what, as consumers, we should understand and appreciate, and is what allows this craft to sustain through time. And then we're a family business in India, in LA. And so the community is something that really happens when we're there in person. I think it's so important, especially if you're doing any sort of manufacturing overseas, to go in person on foot, see what the working conditions are like, making sure you're evaluating them, asking the right questions about the working conditions, fair wages, are they getting paid on time, is work getting distributed evenly? You really have to be there and see with your own 2 eyes, and then understanding where the needs of the community lie, and in our way we try to address those with health camps that we conduct. But yeah, it's the in-person trips that make the sense of community, and then we're constantly, Instagram works in both directions, which is great.
Right, yeah, that's great. Stephen, for you, there's also, you definitely have a sense of community with the vendors and artisans that you work with as well. How did you find those people? How did those relationships come about?
Yeah, so I guess my background is coming from Canada. I started a jean company up in Canada, moved to LA when I was 20 years old with my best friend, and our eyes just opened up. Like, we could not believe that you could make a pair of jeans in Vernon. Like, you know, you'd run around, you'd buy bolts of denim, and you'd take it to a cutter, they'd roll it out, and they'd cut it and then give you a marker, and you'd be off to the next place, and they just slap an address in your hand, and you'd go to this place and, you know, meet so-and-so. And I just fell in love with it. Like, the whole process became a huge treasure hunt for me. And so I really kind of still believe this. Like, you can just about make anything here. I don't know if you can make it affordable, but you can make it, you know, in this city, and it's an amazing city. And so when I first started the furniture company, it started as like almost like a series of like curiosity-led pursuits. And I would go to one place and I would say, hey, this is my idea, I'm trying to figure it out. Do you know anybody? And they'd be like, oh, my cousin might know a guy. Go talk to him. And sure enough, like, he has a brother and he does this. And, you know, it's incredible. It's amazing. And like, my phone is like littered with like different people's names and kind of like what I associate them with, like what they do in the process. And it's, I don't know, there's a genuine sense of community, you know? I hear about how they're doing with their families, I see things, I can be gracious to them if they're late because certain things are going on in their life, and I get to communicate it to my customers and say, hey, we're behind track a little bit, but we're gonna finish on time because of these certain things, or we'll make it up in the process. And on the flip side, probably more cases this way, I'm behind, and I'm like, you need to get this to me by Monday, like, please, you know, and they'll work over the weekend, and there's a relationship that's developed, you know, and like one that's built on trust.
Yeah, it's so important.
I think, and you know, I think community is so sort of integral into everything that we do, right? And I think, you know, it's funny, I'm thinking back like how we first met, Stephen, like, I think we met at one of our art openings at Poketo. Yeah. And, you know, we would always, you know, since day one, actually, we would always, whenever we'd have products, we'd always do a product launch. We'd always partner with a store or gallery to launch this thing and bring people together. And that's sort of friendship, and that community has been sort of part of Poketo DNA from day one. And so whenever we would do these launch parties, you're face to face with people, and you're bringing friends, and you're having a good time, and you know, you're sharing that moment. And so when we opened that first store, I think, you know, that was when we met. And Hopi and I and Lily, we met because when we were doing, fans of your work, obviously, but we were doing workshops when we started creative workshops at the time, and then we did sort of our first workshop together out in Joshua Tree. And I just remember, like, me and Angie packing up, going out there, like, you know, just, we were learning how to do this thing off-site. And
you guys were amazing. It was, but it's true. Like, you really do bring people together. I think Poketo, like what you and Angie do, is that. And we'd never experienced that or seen it. We had no idea. We like didn't know what the design world in LA was. We felt like newbies, just like up alone in our weird little studio. And you guys brought us into the fold and kind of like showed us what it can be like.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, I loved that. And just like seeing this, right? Like, the fact that you guys are here, that you showed up, that we can be here together in this moment, like, that's a lot. Oh, and I think, and also when I'm thinking back with you, Eve, we've known each other
long
for,
time, yeah.
You know what, maybe 15 years. Yeah. Eve actually was our first press ever for Poketo, and really kind of like at that time put us on this map. And you know, it was a daily, you know, I don't know if many of you remember, but there was Daily Candy, which was huge at the time, and Eve was an editor there. And it was one of those things where, you know, you get on Daily Candy and it was like business shot up. And I remember all of a sudden Angie were like, oh my God, from one order and then two and then three and then all this, you know, it was really, really
that
amazing.
makes me really happy too.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I really do. I relate so much to kind of that view of Los Angeles as this kind of amazing place where there's you know, I think people tend to think of it as a sort of a very shallow place, not just in terms of like the people, no offense to anybody here, because I totally don't agree with that characterization, but even in terms of like, oh, there's not as much history here, it's a newer place. But my experience of it, having lived here for over 20 years now, is there's so much to excavate. There's always something to discover. That was what I loved about that job, was I was just spending my days out and about, kind of driving around and looking in corners for interesting businesses and people. And I think that that's really something that I love about also the book and about this particular grouping of people, because you guys really represent, when we talk about a creative community, it's just, it's unquestionable, like that LA is one of the most magical places for that sort of thing.
That's kind of what got us down here too, because when we started in San Francisco,
that's right, yeah.
And when we moved to LA, you felt that energy right away, that collaborative energy. And the book for me is sort of this 16 years of relationships, really. Everyone that is in the book, and the sort of diverse, disciplines that are represented in the book, those are all people that, we've either done, collaborations with, or products with, or workshops with, or some kind of friendship with, and it's really awesome to kind of see sort of that sort of mini 16-year community in that book.
It really is, and it really comes through. I think the book really, it has this very kind of familial, very kind of affectionate tone to it, in addition to just being beautiful and elevated and all of the things that it also is. I'm curious about sort of thinking about all three of you are really business people in addition to being creative people. And one of the things I really think about when I think about the businesses you've built is that they do have this very hands-on, very close to the product, very close to your customer scale to them. They're very sort of human-scaled businesses. And it's interesting kind of in the world as it is today, with kind of people's idea of entrepreneurship being very much shaped by kind of these very big forces like venture capital and sort of a kind of a tech model for how you start something up and how you grow it at this kind of super accelerated rate. And you guys seem, you guys in that regard are sort of outliers, I would say. How has the sort of advent of that type of business model sort of affected your business, affected how you think about your business, and has it been a challenge to kind of maintain your own sort of identity and growth model through that? Any one of you?
I mean, something that comes to my mind right away is something that I tell myself all the time, is that comparison is the thief of joy. And that for us to enjoy the process of what we're doing, we can't be looking around at what other people are doing and be like, oh, we should be more like that. We have to kind of be in our own story and doing what we do with excellence, and that's the only way that we're going to grow and the way that we're supposed to grow. Now, that being said, we are looking at our business right now in the organic growth that we have taken and saying, what is good and healthy about this, and what do we need to kind of mature and grow into so that this can actually grow? And I actually see myself as kind of part of the thing that's hindering growth in the company, because sometimes I love the small organic feeling of being responsible to all the different questions, but I actually have to empower people on our team to answer those questions without me being around. But in terms of looking at what other businesses are doing, like how Amazon's shipping for free, should I be shipping free sofas? I don't know. I don't think so.
It's just not possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think it's really problematic. This obsession with growth that our generation is plagued with, this venture capital backed, you have to be the next, Casper mattress or Warby Parker, this direct to consumer model. These companies that are funded, we're seeing it play out with WeWork. It's really fascinating, actually. They're funded 100% by venture capital, not by their customers, and are often not profitable, which isn't sustainable. How is that sustainable? Exactly.
I always do that when she talks about sustainability.
And I think there's so much value and so much to be proud about in having a healthy small business. Like, my belief is that when I talk to my friends even who are working at these VC-backed companies that are just massively trying to acquire customers, it takes a lot of time and work to get a customer and to bring them into the family and to get to know them and ask them for feedback and nurture them over time. And doing this rapid acquisition of customers year over year over year is difficult, and it ends up being really expensive.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was just, as you were describing it, I was thinking about kind of the metaphor of space again, and how I think, the way that I think you guys grow your businesses is more like when acquire customers, like inviting them into your house. The way that other acquisition model kind of works is more like just kind of like pushing them through a tunnel or a turnstile.
Right.
Right.
And then I'm going to hit them everywhere they go with ads.
Yeah, well, and to your point, it's not actually, I mean, like a thriving small business that has grown on its own steam and is sustainable on its own terms is a rarer and rarer thing, but I'd say probably closer to the kind of original ideals of entrepreneurism that sort of we came up with as a country, Ted, what do you think? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of people don't know this, but, Poketo is 100% independent, and it's been me and Ange since day one, and we haven't had the luxury of, having deep pockets where we can, grow quickly like that, right? So for us, it's been this gradual step, year by year, from one product to 2 to 3, and really kind of just putting all of our money back into the business. And I think that, in a lot of ways, it's kind of awesome. Like, we owe no one anything.
Right. You actually own your businesses, which is, kind of an amazing thing. Yeah.
We've never taken a bank loan. We don't owe, anyone anything. And it's just one of those things where that in itself is really, it's a great lift. Yeah. Right? Because I do hear a lot of, with these companies that are venture backed, where it's like so much stress on just trying to turn a profit or trying to, acquire more customers and to do all these things, but we get to do it on our own terms.
Yeah.
And we get to make decisions based on things that we want to do, right?
Yeah.
So maybe to a fault, it's one of those things where everything that we do is really based on, do we love it? Does it give us joy?
Yeah.
Is it something that we want to do? It's not a numbers driven thing, and that is sort of secondary. I think how do we sort of replicate what we do here in LA? If I kind of if I can close my eyes and sort of dream, like, can this be in New York or San Francisco or anywhere around the globe, I would love that. Yeah. But it's definitely not going to be something that Angie and I can do alone.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And those are such interesting inflection points in like the life of a business, I would imagine. I had one other question that I wanted to quickly ask you guys. I don't know how we're doing on time. I'm very bad at keeping track of that sort of thing. But I wanted to quickly ask you guys about, because we're talking about creative kind of your creative product and your spaces. I'm also curious about the fact that what you create is actually meant to go into other people's spaces, and it's such a personal thing to build something, to create something, to design something, but at some point you start seeing your product on other people's Instagrams and in their homes, and I'm just curious, like, what that's like. Are there moments where you're like, oh no, that shouldn't go there, or like, that's really weird that person has such terrible taste and bought my thing? Like, do you have those moments that are, what is it like, and is it rewarding? Is it scary? Is it, jarring? Toby, you want to?
It's awesome. It's the best. It's like, wow, you like our thing enough, you went online, you bought it, and then you're posting it. Like, Instagram has so many issues, but like, it is touching. Like, every time we see someone, telling our story or putting our thing online. It's an amazing, wonderful feeling. And we recently we were like, oh God, we have to shoot our new rugs. Like, where are we gonna do it? Our space is we've done it too many times. We need like a different take. And so we actually engaged with our Instagram community, and we were like, if you're in LA, do you have a living room that you want to have featured in our shoot? And we got all of these adorable DMs of people all over LA being like, it's kind of dirty, like my kids just got home from school, but here's the space. And we ended up shooting it in the home of one of our customers who's right around the corner in Atwater Village. And it was one of my favorite experiences we've ever had as a business. It's
great.
like you see things online, you see your products in people's houses, but to actually go into this home that they put so much thought and care into, they like scrubbed it top to bottom. Cindy and her kids, you can see it if you look.
That's so cute.
And
yeah.
also we were like, this is a sick house, and like you've done a really good job styling our products. Like we felt inspired by it. So.
Yeah, on occasion you probably learn something from your own customers.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Stephen?
We've had a few interesting moments where I feel like we've got requests for custom materials, and we've made it, and we've been scratching our heads being like, are you sure this, like, there was no mistake? Like, this is right? And then we deliver it, and context is everything. You see it in the home, and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. This is perfect. Like, matches the wall color. It's insane. It looks perfect. It's, wow. And then it just reminds you, too, like, it's really neat that we get to make made-to-order pieces of furniture that our people aren't just shopping out of a catalog. They're actually making exactly what's right for their space so that they're going to keep it forever, or that's our hope or dream, But, that's really kind of like one of the highlights, I would say, in general.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because it's almost like what you're talking about is almost like you're creating an occasion, an opportunity for your customers to be creative, too, right? And to kind of, whether it's a custom piece or not, just the way you situate it, the way you use it is sort of a continuation of that process to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think about one of our customers, her name is Kelly. She would take a lot of Poketo workshops with us, right? So she would come in almost like, I don't know, I want to just say like almost every other week I would see her at these workshops. And these workshops, creative workshops, you can take everything from like looming and weaving to calligraphy to Instagram marketing and all kinds of stuff. So I would see her at each of these workshops, and we'd become friends. All these workshops are very intimate. And what was cool is that then it just goes further, right? So you'd see her at these workshops, and then she's posting about some of the products. And when we came out with the book, she bought the book and wrote this amazing review online. And it was like one of those things where having that sort of not necessarily like you're seeing something in the home, but you're seeing these like kind of real live activities and people together, and you're seeing them face to face, and you're seeing them online. I think to me that's like it's one of the best, And then you have this genuine relationship because it's not just online, but it's in real life, right? At these different events that we do, or and it becomes something just sort of more human, more real, I think.
Yeah, very human, all of it. I love it. It's great. Guys, do you have any questions? I want to make sure that we give you time. She asked what prompted the creation of the book.
So I think the book, in a lot of ways, it's been a dream. And we've been approached a lot by different publishers to do a book, and it was always like, yeah, I would love to do it. Let's do something. And it was always like, okay, well, write a proposal, send us a treatment, give us all this stuff, and it's one of those things where Angie and I running what we, Poketo and everything that we do, we're like, oh my gosh, we cannot spend time like doing all these things to probably eventually just be rejected, right? And so we just never really moved forward with that. And Chronicle, the editor there, one of the editors there, it was the first time that she really championed the brand and really kind of championed this idea of Poketo doing a book. And when we sort of got on the phone and kind of just had some rough ideas, she actually wrote the proposal, the treatment, got everything together, and really presented that to her team, and that's how the book got got greenlit, I guess, in a lot of ways, right? And I think the overall concept was really like kind of, one, I really wanted to bring our creative community in there. And, again, this is sort of like these 16 years of friendships. And each of these people I've known, some from day one, some, more recent. But every single one of them I have a personal relationship with. And it was nice to be able to kind of tell the sort of Poketo story through sort of each of these relationships. And really the space to me is like this really intimate moment, right? You're seeing things finished, unfinished, half finished, in flux, don't shoot this, or you can shoot, it's just like this whole process. And I think Poketo's always been about that, like in each of our spaces as well too. Even the photography, we worked with Yeren Mok, who did all the photography in the book, who has this sort of effortless style. And she really just captured each space without lights or hair or makeup. Like she would literally go in, we would go into each of these spaces and we would sit down and chat. And then Yeren would just go just shoot. She would just grab, and then it'd be like, okay, great. Each of us would have these things, but it was that relationship with Yeren I've known for maybe over a decade. And then our co-writer, Gregory Hahn, I've known for over a decade, who really just understood us personally. So it was really, it was really special to be able to work with people that we know.
I just want to add to that. I'm glad that you guys went that route because it feels really honest. Like when you go through, nothing feels staged. Like there's maybe mess, but it feels really authentic and true. So I'm just glad that you went with that approach. Yeah.
Anyone else?
All right, if I hop in over here. I think that we're going to maybe migrate to the back, and you guys can do one-on-one questions if you have them as you're going through and signing. Sound
Awesome.
good?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you so much. Thanks, guys.